All right. Well, to start, my name is Jaxon Kelch, and welcome everybody to the Open Chapter Society. With me, I have a friend of mine who, for the sake of secrecy and privacy, would like me to refer to him as the Keeper. I know it's ominous, but I'll let you introduce yourself from there.
Hi, so yeah, I'm the Keeper. I narrate scary stories on YouTube.
Any other types of stories, or
Mostly scary. There's on the odd occasion I'll do like fantasy, which is my actual passion, but scary stories are what's popular on YouTube, so that's been the main
hmm,
focus.
okay? I do gotta ask, can you see?
Barely. Like I can tell when you're smiling, but that's about
Oh, all
it.
right. I wanted to ask, how come you wanted to keep everything so private?
There's a big fear of being doxxed. I think that's the main thing. I don't want my personal life to be disrupted because everything I do on YouTube so far has been faceless, and I'm just hoping to keep it that way.
Okay. I also wanted to ask, why did you decide on the name The Keeper?
Interestingly, the Keeper wasn't the first iteration of the whole doing scary stories on YouTube. Originally, it was Timber's Terrifying Tales, and the character I was Timber. It was basically a spooky treant telling you a scary story.
Hmm.
And we did that for a few months, but it wasn't really catching, and people felt it was too cheesy. So then we went back to the drawing board, and one of my assistants was saying, "Let's do something like a little more modern, a little more adult themed, if you will." So we, and I was at the time was really thinking it'd be cool to have more of like a dark presence to it.
Hmm.
So she ended up coming up with this whole character and like the mythos and stuff behind it, which she's still working on. And the whole idea of it is that the keeper is a custodian of these scary stories, and as he reads them, there's like a blue energy that he absorbs, hence like the blue glowing eyes and whatnot.
Are you able to tell about your assistant? Like, how do you know her and all that?
Yeah, so we met through Discord because at the time, this is like way long ago, I was trying to get into just voice acting in general, and I was posting just random funny clips I did. So the clip I did was it was a Warhammer 40k Age of Sigmar story that I did where I did like a comical story about all these orcs, and I posted it in this Discord, and she liked it, thought it was awesome, ended up contacting me being like, "Hey, you should do scary stories because you sound vaguely like Corpse Husband," which if anyone doesn't know, he's another scary story narrator. And this was actually the second time someone had told me to do this because I believe Jaren's brother is also a pretty big fan of like the scary story stuff in general. He told me for years you should do CreepyPastas because you've got the voice for it. And I was just kept on being like, maybe I will, maybe I won't. But then after she told me, I was like, well, if two people are this adamant I should probably just get around to doing it. So that's when I got serious with it.
All right. That makes a lot of sense. Um, did you have any passion behind it or no?
I think I have passion for storytelling in general. Horror was kind of more of like a side thing for me. Like I really
Hmm.
like vampires and werewolves and like the more like gothic aspects of the horror. When it comes to like the shock value and the gore per se, that's not really what I'm in it for. As I've done different genres of stories, I'm starting to or I've acquired more of an appreciation for it. But I think at the end of the day, really, it's just I enjoy the storytelling, and the horror is just one way to do it.
What are other ways you practice this passion of yours?
So in the past, I would do other kinds of narrations. So like for some friends and family, I actually do some children's stories, which like I enjoy that just as much as I enjoy the more like, scary adult stuff. I've also done random voice acting. Like generally through Reddit, I'll find people who want like their video game character voice for their indie game. And I've done a few projects
Hmm.
like that. Lately, I generally get roles involving like soldiers and whatnot. So and that's been pretty fun.
Could you tell me what video games you're in?
Not right now. Most of them haven't released. I don't think any of them have actually come to that point yet. Once they do, I can definitely let you know. One thing I can tell you is there's a different YouTube channel called the Mythical Program, and on that, they're doing like a Half Life animation story, and I voice Mike Hugo in that. That's been pretty fun.
Okay. Oops. um, Mike Hugo, which character was that?
Yeah, so he's one of the main characters. Basically, in this story, it's post-apocalyptic. There's like aliens who are controlling humanity and like dictating whether or not you can have kids and whatnot. So it's like super dystopian. Mike Hugo is starting to build a resistance, and we're only a few episodes in, and that's basically all I can say right now is that they're forming a resistance, and it's about to get really, really tense.
Okay. Do you like these dystopians?
Yeah, I think it's a super fun thing to think about. Like, how would you act if you were in a dystopian society, and like what would separate you from the next person, and like how would you just survive and cope with it? I think that's a lot of fun to think about.
Okay. What's your favorite one?
I really like I Am Legend,
How come?
because it scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. Like out of all the horror stories or in shows I have seen, that's probably my favorite, and it's just really stuck with me.
Okay. I watched that. I didn't really see it as much dystopian, so could you explain how that is dystopian?
Yeah, I guess it does veer off from that a little bit. The most dystopian thing would be society falling apart, but I guess dystopia more so encompasses a society gone wrong. So I guess, yeah, you're
Hmm.
definitely right on that. So in terms of something that's truly dystopian, I would actually say Gattaca.
Hmm.
Um, I think that one resonates with me a lot, especially with the new technology that's starting to emerge. People being able to like, edit the genes of their babies and stuff. It brings up a lot of different ethical questions, and it really makes you think of what, as a people, are we gonna accept and what are we not, and at what point do we other people? Really, really push the boundaries on that.
Hmm. So, what would you say these boundaries are?
For me, I don't like the idea of othering anyone, pretty much, period. The only exceptions would be when, if that group of people is like outright malicious towards humanity in general, like, try my best not to get too political here, but like, let's say a group of people wants to genocide another group of people, not okay with that. At that point, you gotta really think about how you handle that group of people. But for the most part, just because someone looks different or whatever, I don't see that, or has like a different genetic capacity, even, let's say, like for example, uh, someone with Down syndromes, I wouldn't consider them any less human than someone who doesn't have that condition to deal with.
Hmm. Do you think that there are people who would consider that?
I think there definitely is. I don't think it's too prevalent now, thankfully, but I think in the past there was definitely people who were arguing for extermination of what they would consider lesser human beings.
So, what about like a murderer? If they
Okay.
killed one person or even 20 people, let's say, would you say that they are too different that they shouldn't be allowed to live anymore?
Okay, yeah. I think in terms of like any genetic differences, I don't know if that applies there, but in terms of just whether or not they should be around, if we can prove without a shadow of a doubt that they're killing people, obviously that has to stop. We have to, at the very least, incarcerate them. That's a tough one. I know a lot of people believe in rehabilitation, and if that's possible, great, let's do it. But if we just like, if there's no way it can be done, and if there's a risk that they're just gonna go back on the streets and kill more people, which unfortunately happens a lot nowadays, at that point, I would say, yeah, they have to go because mercy to the malicious is cruelty to the innocent. That's something
Mm.
I think rings true, especially nowadays.
You mentioned before about not wanting people to basically face consequences for the ways they were born and conditions with that, such as Down syndrome is the example you used. So I was wondering, what about some sort of mythical sickness that would be hereditary, so passed on generation to generation, that would cannibalize its host, eventually leading to the end of humanity, and if not, the constant suffering of every living being. Would you say that justifies killing them?
Let's see. I think I need to know a bit more about this disease. So, does it all activate at once? Like it spreads and spreads and spreads, and it's not affecting any of the humans. Then all of a sudden, on one day, bam! Every human that has it dies. Or is it like within a certain time frame of that individual's life, it cannibalizes them?
I would say throughout their life it cannibalizes them, but perhaps doesn't kill them at least until after they have kids. And that
Okay.
way, eventually, every single human is going to have this sickness where their bodies slowly eat away at them until they die. So it would be, if you survive, you're in constant agony, and if you die, you die from that only.
Hmm.
Would that justify killing someone?
I would still say no, but I think that's where honor and integrity really come into play. If you had that sickness and you didn't disclose that when you were with someone and planned to have kids with them, I think that should be a crime. Especially if you were knowledgeable that you did have it, which I'm assuming with how severe those conditions are, you would know.
Okay. What if they wanted to do it anyway?
Wanted to have the kids anyway?
Yeah.
Or, okay, I think in that case, it's just their choice. I can definitely see the allure of how that could potentially end humanity, but I think at the same time, people would be aware of it and people would just choose not to have kids with people who had that, which would keep both strands of humanity, if you will, going. And hopefully, eventually, they'd find a cure for it.
What if there wasn't a workaround? What if it was guaranteed that in 1,000 years' time, everyone is doomed to live a life of pure agony until they're 35 and then just drop dead?
Because on one hand, you want to save humanity as a whole, but at the same time, if you do that and you're just slaughtering people, did you really save humanity or did you save something evil?
Mhm.
Is how I would have to look at it.
Okay, that doesn't exactly answer the question, though.
It doesn't. I think ultimately I'd have to say no. I still wouldn't be okay with killing people.
Okay. What if you were the one with the sickness?
I'd probably just avoid people and do what I could to not spread it.
Okay. I also wanted to ask about how before you mentioned them like editing the genes of babies. I
Uh,
wanted to ask, is there a point where that is okay or not okay?
Unfortunately, I don't know if I'm comfortable answering that one, but I do like the question. That's
Okay.
a good thing to be thinking about.
Well, that was my last question down this strand of inquiry. I
Uh,
wanted to ask about your storytelling
hmm.
passion, you said. I wanted to ask where you plan to take that and how you expect it to shape your life moving forward.
Okay, so I'm hoping, because right now I have a day job and everything I do in terms of storytelling is just whatever free time I can muster. So I'm hoping to get to a point where the storytelling would become my day job and I could just really focus on that and focus on expanding the projects that I'm doing. And I think one of like the biggest project I'd want to accomplish within this whole sphere of it is because I'm writing my own fantasy story about like vampires and werewolves and gargoyles and whatnot, and I want to eventually obviously get that published, but then I want to do an audiobook of it where I'm doing the narration and maybe the characters that are one off and show up for one scene, but every single character that's a prominent character and reoccurs, I want to have that properly voiced by someone else. So I think that would be the culmination of what I hope to accomplish doing the storytelling.
Okay. Would you want to tell us more about that book, or would that be too many spoilers?
Okay, no, I can do a little bit. So the main gist of it, and it's going to be called Crowns and Covenants. So the main gist of it is it's about Lowen, who lives in this dystopian society that's ruled by vampires. There's three different vampire nations. He lives in the one that's the dominant one. And in his mind, they're being brutalized and terrorized by the vampires, and they are like forced to give them blood. And he's not okay with that. So ultimately, what he wants to do, because he knows that the High Princess is coming to town to give a speech, he wants to assassinate her. But if he does, the whole world's going to change. And that's about as
Okay.
much as I can tell you without spoiling anything.
All right. Well, I have two questions. The first is, what do you think that it would take for you to get to a point of having storytelling be your main job?
That kind of depends on the routes I go. If I'm doing strictly just YouTube, it might take a minute, especially the landscape right now. The entire genre is basically being ruined by AI, and for two different reasons. The first reason is that the competition is enormous because people can use AI to narrate a whole story in seconds, whereas it would take me several hours to get that story out.
Mhm.
Plus, the people using the AI, they can just generate a story, whereas for myself, I don't like to do like anything AI at all. So if I want to narrate a story, I have to contact the actual author, work out the permissions, make sure that they're okay with me doing it. And then after that, I like go in the booth, I narrate it. Then after that, I have to edit it and do all that stuff. So the amount of time it takes for me to do one video, they could do 10, if not more. So because of that, it just makes the space way crowded. But the other issue with AI is because there's so much of the slop out there and people aren't happy with it, YouTube has started to demonetize people for being inauthentic. which at the surface you would think, oh, that's great. We're going to get rid of all this just content that's inhuman and really shouldn't be there. But the downside, and there's some severe irony in this, they're using an AI to determine what is inauthentic and what isn't.
Mm.
And the AI is by no means perfect. So there's a lot of people who are legit narrators like myself. Like they may or may not use AI for their visuals, but at the very, very least, they are narrating with their own voice. They're getting demonetized and being deemed as inauthentic. So, and this has been happening slowly at first, but pretty rapidly. And I have a lot of friends in this space. Some of them have been demonetized, have gone through a lot of effort, and have been remonetized, but a lot of them still haven't. And it's making people wonder if YouTube is just not the platform to be doing this, and if they need to move over to like Spotify or Rumble or something else. But the whole creepypasta, scary story narration culture hasn't really been migrated over to anywhere else yet. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of fear of how do you make that, because for a lot of people this is their full-time job, and their concern is how they keep going forward if they get demonetized on YouTube. So what I've seen a lot of people do is they'll expand into doing like Patreon or Coffee or some of those others businesses, but that requires that you have a big enough fan base that cares enough about you to actually donate in that way. So I think ultimately for me, while I would like that to become my day job, that's definitely the dream. I'm probably going to be doing these scary stories just for the love of the game, whether or not it actually makes money or not. Whether or not I make money just determines on how much I can do.
Okay. Have you considered moving over to those platforms just to spread around?
Definitely, yeah. I do have a Rumble, and I do have a few other of those platforms. I haven't given them hardly any time, just because YouTube lately has been taking up so much of my time.
Mm.
But once I get things, or once I get a little more used to what I'm doing, because we have been doing a lot of different like upgrades. For example, back in the day when I do a story, there'd be like one image the entire way through. Lately, I've been trying to actually appear on camera in the suit, but that's a lot of effort. And like I said, I'm completely blind when I wear it. I've ran into walls plenty of times trying to do different shots. So it's definitely a lot more effort. But once I kind of get more used to that, the plan is to get these other programs, or sorry, platforms going, just so that there's a backup or other, just like a little bit of residual income would also help.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I also wanted to ask, have you tried just marketing and like maybe in the video title say like not AI, something like
Oh
that?
yeah, definitely. I've made a new intro, and in that intro, there's some like text that will fly up that will say like the keeper, and then no AI, authentic narration. And I've also on my thumbnails started to put different logos or whatever that will say either human voiced or AI free or something to that effect. So we're definitely trying to push that angle of it.
Okay. I just wanted to ask because I listen to a lot of stuff on YouTube and
Uh,
like I like a lot of like religious or weird stuff, like when stuff goes into detail about the Book of Enoch, for example,
uh,
and it's so often an AI voice, and so
yeah.
often it'll sit there and tell me that it feels unnerving or it feels like something that was meant to be lost to time. And every
uh,
time I just think, don't tell me what it feels like.
hmm.
Don't pretend a robot has feelings.
Yeah.
Dirty clanker.
My thoughts exactly. Um, I did want to ask though, this is a bit off topic, but I'll come back to the AI subject.
Yeah.
How do you think that your own life and your own experiences has shaped your stories that you're working on?
Oh yeah. I think a great deal. Maybe not so much in the narration aspect of it, but in terms of the stories that I write, for example, that vampire story, a lot of what I went through and what I felt growing up, I encapsulated into the story. So each character has a little bit of me, or like a little bit of what I went through to some extent. Obviously, not some stuff is made up for the sake of the story, and some characters are based off of like other people I grew up around and whatnot. Obviously, no one's a one to one caricature, but there definitely was some real life influence on how I wrote that story.
Okay. Are you willing to go into any of that or no?
I can a little bit, yeah. Like, for example, I have this character named Nemos. He is So he belongs to the kingdom of Fjorn, which is far off to the west. And this is the one kingdom that still remains that is not ruled by the vampires. And these guys wield magic. So if anyone has seen the show Avatar: The Last Airbender, if you can imagine someone who just bends light, that's what they do. And using that, they're able to go toe to toe and remain sovereign against the vampires. There's a lot of like ifs, ands, and buts about what they can do and how long they can do it. So it's not like um, they're completely immune to the dangers of vampirism. But for the most part, they're pretty competent about fighting them. But anyway, so this character Nemos, he's the Grand Duke of one of the duchies. I based him very heavily on one of my real life friends that I grew up with. The biggest aspect is that the name of it is the name that this character, or my friend, invented. It was like his gaming name, essentially.
Mm.
So I just took that, and then I took like the physical characteristics, or they match pretty good. The personality stuff is way different. My friend in real life is way more jovial, way more happy, whereas Nemos is a lot more stoic and reserved. And I don't want to go too much into that because it would spoil things. But yes, that's like one way that people I grew up with or experiences I had have definitely found their way into the story.
Okay. Would you tell me why did you decide to do gothic and vampires?
Yeah, so when I was a teenager, Twilight came out, and that was big, and everyone loved it. Well, I didn't, but a lot of it was pretty popular. And then when it came out, I was like, okay, it's cool that there's a show that's like this big and awesome or whatever, but I want something that's vampires for the boys.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to make a completely different story. So I started looking at just other vampire stories in movies. Like, for example, I was pretty big into Blade. I was pretty big into Underworld. I liked those a lot, but there was things about them that just didn't quite do it for me. I also wanted a bit more of that fantasy aspect. So, because at the time I was also big into like Warcraft and Warhammer, just like Lord of the Rings,
Mm-hmm.
anything that was fantasy, I had an interest in it. So I essentially melded those two concepts. I took the vampires that I was just wanting a real good vampire story and adding in some more fantasy elements to it, and it evolved into what it is today.
Okay. Back to that other subject.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on AI overall?
I think it's a double-edged sword. Mostly, I can't stand it, and I think it's pretty bad for humanity. At the same time, and this is being that I live in America, there's some like overall security concerns of like if other countries advance in it faster than we do, they could use that against us. So I don't want that. So for that small reason, I want us to at least be competent in it, not in the generative aspect. Like, for example, I don't want AI voices, I don't want AI art, I don't want AI stories, I don't want any of that. I have heard that it can be used for medicine and whatnot. I don't know how true that is, but if it is true, I wouldn't say get rid of something that could create medicine to help someone. Obviously, I think we
Mhm.
shouldn't pass up opportunities to help people. But also, when it comes to just like dominance, I think it's risky to let other countries and societies and whatnot out tech you and then put you in a position where you're going to be vulnerable to them.
Mhm. Are there any reasons other than that you are in the field of storytelling and stuff that you don't like the AI voices and AI writing?
Yeah, that's definitely a factor, and I do see how I'm pretty biased towards that. But I think it really comes down to what makes us human, and it's the raw, unfiltered, genuine expression of things. Whereas with an AI, there's none of that. And there's also, and I guess this is less in like the storytelling aspects, but just like when everyone always goes to an AI to get their answer, that bypasses their need to actually talk to a human being, so the socialization of our society starts to weaken.
What are your thoughts on AI writers?
I don't like that at all, especially because a lot of the AI's ability to do that was when it analyzed and copied and stole essentially other writing, sometimes with the writer's consent, but in many cases the consent wasn't given. So in the end, what we're receiving when we get the AI story out of the prompt is bits of someone else's story that they weren't giving out of their free will. So the theft aspect is definitely probably my biggest issue with it. Secondarily is how it affects just the genuine expression of humanity.
How do you mean?
It kind of just loops back to what we were thinking about when you're talking to an AI and you bypass the need to actually talk to someone. I guess it's somewhat similar because you're still, if you're reading a book, even if it's written by a human, it's an inanimate object at the end of the day. But even then, the book was written by someone who understand why the words were being constructed in the way that they were, whereas for an AI, it's all just noise, and it's just like throwing things together and hoping that you're happy with it at the end of the day, but it doesn't
Mhm.
truly understand what was being said when it was written.
Hmm. That makes sense. Do you think there would be any issues with passion and how basically AI's lack of it?
Definitely, yeah. It does kind of sedate humanity when we don't have that passion, we don't have that drive to actually get out there and like accomplish things. And I can see this going both ways because people could use AI to some extent to fulfill their passion. So, for example, kind of looping back to the whole narration scene, there's a lot of narrators who use AI for their thumbnails and their art because, like, this whole narration scene, the real draw is the narration itself. The visuals are just secondary, but you have to have a good thumbnail to get good click through rate to get people to actually watch the video to begin with. So they'll resort to using an AI to make their pictures because they either can't afford an artist to do their thumbnails or just too lazy to go through with it. So I can kind of see where they feel like they have to use AI to accomplish their actual to do their narrations, which is what they're there to do. But for myself, while I was tempted in the past, and I don't like to admit this, I did use AI. My thought process was I would use the AI thumbnails up until I was monetized, and then I would hire an artist. But along the way, I kind of realized it's kind of hypocritical for me to advertise that man, my voice like is authentic, and that's why you should listen to it. If there were other things about the whole presentation, which the thumbnails are, that was AI. So I eventually got to a point where it felt disingenuous. So I got rid of all the AI visuals on my channel. I had to just completely take down some videos, and I did end up getting several different artists to make my thumbnails, and in some cases, I make my own thumbnails. But whatever the case, I'm vetting it pretty thoroughly to make sure that it's all human.
Okay. In what ways did that positively or negatively affect your uh, production?
So negatively would be the extra time I have to spend into doing it because it takes way more time to like coordinate with the artist, and obviously I have to pay them, and like the budget for the channel is limited.
Mhm.
Um, and then there's also like the whole. But I think really, yeah, just the time and the money is like the main detriment.
Mhm.
In terms of positive, there's been a few people who have come across the channel, realize that's not AI, and then they subscribe and they like leave helpful comments and they love it.
Mhm.
You could definitely argue that from like purely a money making standpoint, I'm using the losing option because if I were to just even clone my own voice, I could just pump out videos like crazy. I probably would have been monetized months ago. But the downside is if I went that route, obviously I'd be going against my own morals and convictions. But the other
Mhm.
aspect is I would eventually get demonetized for being AI slop, and the chances of being remonetized would be pretty slim because it would be obvious that I wasn't authentic.
Okay. In what ways, other than how you mentioned before with like the medicine and stuff, do you think that AI can help the world overall?
I'm not too deeply studied into this, so these would be more kind of like niche, potentially not even realistic options. But let's say we did make a robot that could go into a dangerous situation like a burning building, and because of its like AI functionality, could save extra people compared to like we'd otherwise have to send in real people like firefighters. Like I don't want to replace the firefighters, but some situations are so dangerous that's like obviously like yeah, if we send a human being in there, they don't have the strength, the capacity to make it back out. So at that point, it would make sense to send in a robot that could kind of be self-guided and rescue whoever's in danger.
Can you see any other ways that like mass-produced AI would be beneficial?
Hard to think of right now. Well, there definitely are benefits. I don't know if there's any benefits that outweigh the consequences, especially in terms of the mass production.
Hmm. I've said this before,
Uh,
but I haven't said specifically on this channel. I do follow capitalism
uh,
and like um even in the Communist Manifesto, Marx says that you can only move into communism from a point of capitalism because you can't just start in communism. That'll crumble your country instantly.
Hmm.
So I've said before that something like socialism can only work if you don't need to work. Because if we're all getting paid equally and we're all doing the same job and then I quit, then we're all getting paid equally and I'm not doing work. And then you quit and we're all getting paid equally and we're both not working. The whole operation crumbles because sooner or later everyone's getting paid and nobody's doing anything. And so what I said was that, you know, if we have to work at all, socialism doesn't work. If we don't have to work, socialism only works in a utopia where we can say, I need food and wave our hand and have food. Do you think the AI could help us get to a point of that?
I think technically it could get us past the point of scarcity. I know that's a big concept in a lot of different like sci-fi shows.
Mhm.
So I definitely see the allure of it for that.
Do you think that there would be any negatives to having a world like that where we don't need to work?
I think I don't know. It's hard to say. I know they've done tests on rats where, and obviously like a rat's way different than a human, but they've done tests where if they get the rat to the point where it has no strive to survive, it starts to have issues. So I'd be
Mhm.
curious if humanity would have issues as well. Like if we got to a point where you're just existing, would we end up becoming like the humans in Wall-E, where we're fat and dependent on everything, and like if we lose our robots, all of a sudden we just can't survive? So I think that would really be the main downside is if we had these robots that just did everything for us, that's great. But then what, if something suddenly happens to the robots, are there any humans left who are capable, or do we just die because at that point we're incapable of surviving?
That makes sense. That was a pretty good answer. I was thinking pretty much the same thing as those rats you
Uh,
mentioned before, and pride. I know a lot of people who take pride in their work, and like
uh,
when I write something and then my wife reads it and she says, "You did a great job. I really liked such and such things about this."
uh,
I really take pride in that, and it pushes me to want to get more books out and get any books out faster. But like there are work things that we do that we take pride in. And like I work in a cabinet shop, I build cabinets faster than anybody else, and I really take pride in that. What do you think a world would look like without pride because of these AI?
yeah, I think beauty would be the first casualty. So if people had no drive, just make stuff and to make it look good, then yeah, it wouldn't happen, and eventually everything would go bland.
I think we're already on our way there.
I think, unfortunately, if the whole AI narration scene is anything to go by, then I'd say yes, that is the case.
Okay. Do you think that pride is then a good thing in this case?
In this specific case, I would say yes.
Okay. Could you elaborate on like why?
I think it loops back to just the whole drive to make something beautiful. But I also think, just so we don't get confused here, because when we think of pride, for some people, they're going to conjure ideas of like, I'm better than everyone else is inferior.
Hmm.
But I think we have to remember, because like in Greek, the word love isn't just one word. There's like three or possibly more words for it because there's like, romantic love, just like sibling love and what have you. I think that should apply to pride as well. Because when we're talking, like I know talking to you when you're talking about pride and your work and whatnot, you're not, I'm assuming at least, you're not thinking about it from a stance of superiority. You're thinking of from a stance of, I guess, more so like self-esteem.
Hmm.
So I think that's, yeah, the self-esteem aspect of pride, I think, is really good and really important for just the human psyche in general.
Okay. In that case, why would you think that pride is considered one of, if not the greatest of the seven deadly sins?
Okay, so I think that kind of stems back to because there's, if you split hairs, different definitions of it. So if the pride is coming from the stance of I'm superior to others, therefore I can other them and I can treat them less than human, that's definitely within that sin category and something that I don't agree with.
What if you had it the opposite, where you said, like, not that you are less than me, but that I am more than you. You
Uh,
should treat me as more than human.
let's see. So if I thought that about you,
Let's explore both of them.
okay,
Both you thinking that about somebody else or them trying to push it on you, and also you thinking about yourself and trying to push that on others.
okay. So if I'm understanding this right, if someone came up to me and said that I'm superior to them, obviously they have free agency. I can't really control them, but I would probably explain to them that that isn't healthy and that I'm just a human like them. There's no reason for them to think that I'm superior to them in any way.
And what if it was provable that you were superior?
Okay, that'd be interesting. I think if in this scenario for some crazy reason I was superior to someone else, I think the best course of action would be to just be humble about it and not use that as or as a way to justify any kind of force or manipulation on them.
Okay. And what about someone basically telling you that they are superior to you and that you should treat them as being superhuman, shall we say?
Interesting. Okay, so I would disagree with it if they somehow were able to like prove it scientifically. Even then, I would tell them it doesn't matter. I'm not going to treat them any different. At the end of the day, I still view us all as just human, sentient beings. There's no reason to divide us like that.
Okay. So you think that everyone has equal value?
I think by default, yes, but that can change depending on how you live your life. And this kind of goes back to what we were saying about the murderers. At that point, because of their actions and their choices, they do need to be kept away from society to protect the innocent. But I don't think there was anything lesser about them until they made those choices.
Okay. How do you classify the innocent? What really separates them from these people who are deciding that they are better than them?
Okay, so I think to be innocent in this context, you have to be someone who just hasn't gone out of your way to harm someone. Because it's really what it boils down to for me is when you harm someone, especially if you do it knowingly, that's when you're not innocent.
Okay. Is that where you draw the line between the innocents and the people who think that they're better? What if somebody thinks that they're better, like, say, a white supremacist is saying that they're better than black people, but doesn't do anything about it and doesn't harm them or ask them to be treated differently? He just, whenever he encounters them, is like,
Okay,
I'm better than you. You know,
gotcha.
what would you say about that?
That's a good question. So I think, because I'm a big believer in free speech, as long as you're not threatening someone. Like if you're threatening someone, they should be allowed to like act on that. So
Mm-hmm.
if this person is saying they are superior to people, I think really we just tell them they're wrong and they're dumb,
Mm.
basically. But if they're saying I'm better than you, and because I'm better than you, I can harm you, even if they haven't done the harm yet, because they've declared the intent to harm, that's when you can act on it. Basically, I want to ride a fine line of I don't want things to be like how they. I haven't been to Europe, so I don't know if this is 100% the case, but I've heard that their freedom of speech situation is getting a little shaky. And I don't want to get to that point, but the same. So I think I draw the line at just the declaration of intent.
Okay. Have you ever read John Locke?
Uh, I don't think I have.
No. Um, I was learning about him in 12th grade,
Hmm.
and one of the things that he teaches is basically you don't harm another person
Uh,
just off principle unless they've deserved it. And if they go screaming at you, you don't harm them. If they say, like, I hate you, I want to kill you, be ready to do something. Don't do something. The second they actually show, like, make action towards harming you or someone near you, kill them.
hmm.
Basically, make them incapable of harming people.
uh,
So that would be like if I come at you saying, like, oh, I hate you, I want to kill you and your family, maybe get a gun on yourself and be ready to draw it every time I'm around. But until I actually make a move to hurt you or your family, he would say, don't shoot yet, you know?
Oh.
Just be ready. What are your thoughts on that?
I halfway agree with that. I think the getting the gun and being prepared, that's a good step. But I think realistically, right when that was declared, you would probably need to consider getting a restraining order from the cops or like doing something because unfortunately, a lot of times people take action too late, and because of that delayed action, people die, especially the innocent people.
Mm-hmm. Can you think of any instances where that has happened that it could have been avoided?
Oh, off the top of my head, I can't,
All right.
unfortunately.
Did you have any subjects you were coming here hoping to discuss?
So I had a few just like interesting and I guess in how you think about it, scary stories that we can go over. If you're down for that.
If you want, yeah. You're the
Okay,
guest.
so I was once at a theme park, and I don't want to get in trouble for naming them, so I won't. But I was at this theme park, and I was there with my friend. And it was a pretty fun theme park, and they had this one ride that you have to pay extra money to go on. And how this ride works, essentially, is like an ultra glorified bungee jump. They put you in this little apparatus, and then they launch you up, and you're just kind of like swinging on this bungee. But whatever the case, what made this experience so interesting kind of freaks me out when I think about it is right when they strapped me in, the worker goes back to like the machine with all the levers where they, operate the ride. And he's about to push the button when his friend looks up and starts freaking out, going, he's not strapped in all the way. And he runs down and finishes strapping me in, yells at his buddy, and then goes back. And then he tells him, all right, now go. So then we launch, and the whole time I'm thinking, I could have splattered there, I could have splattered there, I could have splattered there, just like totally freaked out. So yeah, very, very interesting experience.
I've heard that sometimes they'll do that for fun. Just like,
Oh, really?
yeah, when someone's going to hit the button, they just look at some random person on a roller coaster and like, wait, they're not stepped in. Wait, no. And they just go, and that one person's freaked out.
Yeah.
And really, they're completely safe.
Okay, well, that actually makes me feel better about it, because hopefully that was the case and I wasn't actually in danger.
I don't know. If you came and actually edited it, I bet you were in danger. I know about that one. And if all goes well in my life, I never go on it.
Yeah, it's pretty intense as far as rides go.
Hmm. You like a lot of scary rides like that?
Oh, yeah, whenever I go to a theme park, I generally go right for the big one.
Not me. This next part of the story is a little bit visual, but I went to a nearby theme park with my in-laws, and so my wife dragged me on. We went to the very biggest one right at the start. Huge roller coaster where you like kick off by going upside down and dropping down. I'm sure you know exactly what one I'm talking about. And we all got off, and everyone loved it. They had so much fun. And my wife's brother turns to me and goes, Jax, were you okay for that? And I was like, yeah, why? And he says, well, I looked around the room and everyone was going like, yeah, woohoo, yeah. And then I looked at you and you were going. And it was then that I told them, I need like a warm-up ride. I need somewhere to like expect that I'm moving fast, you know? I wanted to ask also if you had any questions for me.
Okay, yeah. So why did you start this podcast?
Because I wanted to. I thought that it would be a nice opportunity to talk to a lot of interesting people if it gets big enough that I can get more interesting people than just the people I already know on.
Yeah.
It also would help me become better with conversational skills. One thing was, that some of my cousins have their own podcasts, and my wife, like I told my wife that I thought it sounded fun, and she said, you should do it.
That makes sense.
I probably should have told you before, but at some point I'm going to ask you, what's the quote of the day? At which point you can just say your favorite quote or whatever you want. So their previous guest was Lance, and he said his quote was, "What if it worked?"
Uh,
I don't remember where it was from, but it's basically whatever it is that you're looking into trying, what if it worked? What if it was successful? You know, could be um, thinking about dating a girl and don't know if it'd be worth it if it doesn't end up in marriage. What if it did? You know, thinking about starting a job and you don't know if it's going to get you anywhere. What if it worked out? I can tell you other ones if you want, but that was the most recent, and we always say the most recent one, at least.
nice. Okay.
What are your thoughts on that? What if it worked?
I think it's a good mindset to have because fear generally is the biggest impediment to enjoying your life to the fullest and accomplishing your goals and your dreams. So having that aspect of, yeah, what if it worked? What if I just do it and see how it plays out? I think that's a good mindset to have.
That was funny coming from you. Have you ever had fear stop you from doing something in your life?
Oh yeah. So just looping back to this whole keeper thing, when Jaren's brother first mentioned that I should do it, there was definitely some fears of, well, what if I do it and I sound terrible, or people hate my voice, or they think I'm too just cringy, or whatever. Um, so that took a long time, and it wasn't really until my other friend told me that no, you really should do it, that I started to really believe in myself. Like, yeah, maybe I'll just do it, and if it turns out terrible, I was masked, so it doesn't matter. Nobody knows it was me for the most part.
Yeah, I get that.
So definitely was a situation there.
That's funny. I had an opposite experience. I thought that my voice would be nice and pleasant, and then we recorded the first one with Amaron. Jaren sent it to me once he finished editing it so I could listen through it. And that whole time I was just thinking, Amaron is so nice to listen to. It was like, there's something just so calming about it. I sound like a wuss. Like, I sound pathetic. Yeah.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I still do struggle with my own voice too. Like some
Yeah.
days I like it, other days I'm just like way overcritical with it.
Mhm.
And this is a little off topic, but I found it kind of funny because I know a lot of people like listen to this kind of content to lull them to sleep, and that's definitely true because I found when I'm editing my content, I am literally talking myself to sleep when I'm trying to go
It's a deep
through and delete
voice.
all the mistakes. Yeah, it's been one of the issues. Slow my content down is like, yeah, I'm putting myself to sleep.
You ever think it's weird to hear about people listening to horror stories to bed?
Yeah, that was definitely kind of an eye opener when I got into this because I figured they were doing it for the entertainment of it, and a lot of people are. But then later on, I learned that there's like a growing movement of no, I want this to relax me. Definitely seems kind of counterintuitive that something that's supposed to scare you and get your adrenaline pumping is going to help people relax and go to sleep.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. I I would say about that, and this is a little bit off topic, but it circles back around. I was once listening to an audiobook of The Alchemist while I
Uh,
was going to bed, and I fell asleep on the couch, and my little siblings came in and turned on Power Rangers.
uh,
And so my dream was relatively straightforward with The Alchemist. Like, I was the boy Santiago, went into the desert with the whole caravan. When he meets the alchemist, you know, a dark rider comes on a dark horse, and in my dream, he jumps off the horse, rips off his cloak, and he was an evil Power Ranger, and he pulled out a big sword and attacked me. And so, what I have to say about that is, do you think these people are manufacturing their own nightmares by listening to your content to bed?
uh, that could definitely be the case.
In a follow up, I would ask, do you think they like it?
Some of them probably do, especially if there's someone who just likes the feeling of adrenaline. I could see how that would be something that helps them get that even when they're asleep.
Sorry, I kind of interrupted. So, what were your thoughts about them manufacturing nightmares?
Oh, yeah, so I think that's definitely a possibility. Because, yeah, generally our nightmares stem from just other aspects of our life and what we experience throughout the day. So, unfortunately, yeah, I think to some extent I am helping fuel people's nightmares. Just hopefully I'm giving them more joy and value than I am inflicting anything negative.
Okay. Have you given yourself nightmares with these stories?
Um, I don't think that I have. And generally, because there's like a wide range of what people will narrate, and I've done a wide range myself, but I tend to pick stories that are a little less gory and a little less intense. Um, Obviously, there's some exceptions, but I think because of that, it hasn't really exposed anything that would give me myself a nightmare.
Okay. Do you ever have nightmares?
Yeah, although my nightmares are generally fighting off like a lion or a cougar or just like some wild animal, which is funny because
Mm.
that doesn't really show up in my stories at all.
Which one do you think you could win in a fight?
Um, Possibly a cougar. I think a lion, especially a male lion, I'd be toast.
Really? I like to think that a cougar would be pretty easy. Um, what do you think is the toughest animal you could beat in a fight?
And I'm assuming that we're not having any weapons. It's just fist to claws or whatever.
Let's suppose you did have a knife, but it
Okay.
snuck up and it pounced on you. When it did, you stumbled and dropped the knife. And so you're in a fight, but there's a knife somewhere in the area.
Okay. Well, if I got pounced on, I think anything with teeth would go for the throat, and that would just be the end of it. So it would have to be something without teeth that could just end me.
Well, what if it just pounced on you from behind or
Okay.
something?
In that case, maybe like a small leopard, but I think anything larger than that, that's gonna be one heck of a fight to live through.
All right. Why do you think so? Like, you just think that you're not strong enough or not quick enough or what?
I think for my case specifically, and I don't know if you know this, but I've had tons of concussions throughout my life, which
Mm.
definitely affect like my reaction time, and to a large extent that affects my ability to speak, which is something I've had to work with, and has made the whole narration career pretty interesting. But anyway, because of that, it definitely has affected my combat abilities. So unfortunately, I have to admit, the average healthy man could definitely withstand something greater than I could.
Okay. I didn't know about that. Would you be willing to talk about that or no?
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm going to remember all of them because unfortunately, memory is one of the things that's affected. But
Hmm.
one of the first ones I remember was I was on this like chair that could swivel, and I thought it'd be fun to just, spin around. And I did it so much I eventually launched off into our glass door, broke the glass, and I'm pretty sure for this incident I went to the hospital, but there was like some pretty significant damage to the head. So
Hmm.
that happened. Later on, I think I had two different incidents on the swing set where I was swinging, thought it'd be fun to launch myself off, and I apparently am terrible at aiming. I hit the pole of the swing,
Ooh.
so blacked out for a few seconds on those. I've had at least two incidents at school where, so basically after those three incidents, I became prone to just fainting.
Hmm.
So at school, there were several occasions where we'd be standing for like long periods of time, and I would start to feel like I'm going to pass out, but it was generally in a situation where we couldn't sit down for whatever reason. And then I eventually would pass out and just land on the floor, and we'd be like in an auditorium or whatever where the floor is hard. So
Hmm.
that would cause a few seconds of being blacked out. Then I had another incident when I was still pretty young. I was playing baseball with some friends, and I was standing behind my friend, and this is definitely on me. I was too close behind him for when he had a bat, but he hit the ball and swung around like more than 180 degrees, and I was
Hmm.
there, so the metal bat hit my temple pretty hard, and that like just knocked me backwards, and I was out cold for a minute. Um, then I had another more recent incident where I was at my house and I was coming down the stairs and I was talking to some people, and like mid sentence, all of a sudden I just passed out and I landed on the sheetrock and left a pretty big dent in that. So between like all that, my head's been through quite a bit.
All right. Uh, Almost sounds like a miracle that you're still talking.
It pretty much is. Very fortunate. Like as terrible as it's been, like just dealing with all that, I do have to look at the bright side and think, yeah, I am very grateful to be alive and able to have the functionality that I do
Hmm.
have.
At what point did you decide to start being more careful about it?
Uh, I think it was after the last one because a lot of those things, like a lot of those concussions happened and they did cause some symptoms, but the symptoms were kind of slow to really reveal themselves. So it took me a long time to realize I'm having issues because of these concussions, because I just figured like all of a sudden this issue shows up, but it's been so long since the concussion, I didn't put two and two
Mm-hmm.
together. So unfortunately, I was like wondering if it was like some other reason why I was having these issues. But after that last one, it kind of forced me to explore it deeper, and I was having like more severe issues, especially with eyesight. Like eyesight's, especially since that last incident's been pretty bad. It's like I can't drive at all, unfortunately, because my eyesight
Mm-hmm.
kind of looks like if you have like your phone, if you push too hard on it and it gets all pixelated and weird. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of how my eyesight is, but all the time. So it's not something glasses can just fix. It's just pretty much always there.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. So after that last one, kind of realized I gotta really just be more careful and start working on taking care of myself, because I don't want this to be something that takes me out earlier in life than I should go. So
Is there something that they can do about your eyesight?
I think to an extent, yeah. And I've been seeing a different, or I've seen a lot of different specialists for this, and the current guy I'm working with has been working pretty hard, and we have made some progress. So my eyesight's like by no means better compared to how how it should be, but it definitely has improved, and it's definitely. And I'm hoping to eventually get back to where I'm just fully functional again, as if the concussions never happened.
Okay. At least there's some good news in all that.
Yeah.
This has been fun though. I've had more questions for you that I've had to write in this notebook than anyone else so far. All right, I know this one might be a little bit more bland, but what's your favorite book?
I think in this moment, if I had to say, I'd probably say Redwall.
How come?
It's one of the like when I was a kid, it was the first like big book that I read. And this one, it actually wasn't Redwall. It was within that universe, but I think it was called Mossflower
Mm,
was the specific title. But yeah, so it was the first like big book that I read, and I felt like just a massive sense of accomplishment, because I'd always seen like these big like Lord of the Rings and whatnot, but I was like, oh, that's too daunting. I'm not going to do it. But this is the first book I buckled down. I was like, I'm going to read a big book, and I actually
mhm.
did it. So because of that, it became a formative memory for me.
Okay. Um, at which point did you read Redwall?
So I've seen the series on it. I haven't actually read that book. So I read
Oh,
Mossflower, I read Pearls of Lutra, I read quite a few of them, but because I had seen the cartoon of the actual Redwall, I never actually got around to reading that one.
okay. Do you think you're missing out on anything by not reading that one?
I probably am, because a lot of times the TV adaptations don't quite do it justice, which unfortunately is most of the time. So
Hmm.
I definitely would get some value if I found the time to go back and read it.
What would you say is the most notable time the TV adaptation has skewed the original book?
Okay, so there's probably better examples, but my knee jerk answer here would be Aragon.
In what ways?
Um, a lot of the lore didn't sync up. And so, like, I will say that Aragon, if you haven't read the book at all, it's a decent fantasy show. But if you've read the book and then go see the movie, it feels completely butchered.
Hmm.
Especially,
Okay.
and like, this is one more notable example is so in the story, for anyone who hasn't read or seen the story, this kid gets a dragon and he trains it over time and like ends up fighting this war against this evil king. But in the book, like there's definitely a span of time where he's like training the dragon and getting it ready and whatnot. In the movie, the dragon grows and like magically in the space of like 10 minutes. So that
Mm.
really like takes out so much of the story. At least it did for me.
Hmm. Personally, I haven't seen the movie since being too young to really remember much of it.
Uh,
But also, I didn't really think that Aragon was that great of a book to begin with. What were your thoughts on it?
yeah, I definitely see the reasoning there. That does copy pretty heavily from a lot of other shows, like, or I guess books and shows like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. You could definitely make the case that there's a lack of originality there. I think for me, the draw of what made it good to me was the way it was packaged together. I think there's definitely some merit there, but I absolutely would not say it's on the same tier of like Lord of the Rings or Mistborn or something of that caliber.
Okay. There was one thought that I had when
Uh,
I read those books that I wanted to ask on your thoughts on it. Basically, it's a world filled with magic, and there's like magic at every turn, and the main character is a dragon rider who's one of the most powerful beings in the world. But I found when I was reading it that the most interesting character and the one that I wanted to follow was his cousin Roran, who had zero magics in his life. What would you say about that?
I think that makes a lot of sense, and it kind of shows up in some more recent um, movies and shows as well. For example, you have The Mandalorian, which is in the Star Wars universe. So you think, oh, there's going to be like Jedis, and the story's going to be about a Jedi. But it's not. It's about someone who doesn't have the Force, and it's just so compelling to see how someone who doesn't have like the mystical power survives and copes in a world where there's people who do. So I think that makes, yeah, I can definitely see how Roran, is that how I'm saying that character's name?
I
Is that
think
correct?
so,
Yeah,
Roran.
I can definitely see the allure of his story in particular.
Okay. Um, what do you think about that? And like, would you have it in your own books? Do you have characters like that?
Yeah, I actually do. So, um, don't want to spoil too much, but what I will say is because obviously there's the vampires and the people who become vampires. So that's kind of an allegory to like the Force. So you become a vampire and you get all the strength. Or we have, like when we were talking about Nemos, he lives in that kingdom of Fjorn, and those are the Fjorsoth. They're basically the humans that have the light power. They also are kind of like an enhanced being and they have more power to them. But I do have characters that are pretty relevant to the story who don't get either of that, and they have to like cope with everyone else who does and like live with the consequences of how those different factions interact with each other. So yeah, hopefully for those who like that kind of storytelling aspect, they'll find enough of it in my book to be satisfied.
Okay. I was just curious because like I've been thinking about it a lot recently, a lot today specifically, but like probably the most prominent favorite characters in Lord of the Rings are Samwise and Aragorn, neither of which are magical, and yet they are the most favored.
Uh,
And like practically every time they really need magic, they don't have it.
yeah.
And there's just something about that that I really liked. And
Uh.
I kind of wanted to know if I'd like yearbooks when it's out.
uh, there definitely is, because one thing I notice in books is that in some books the magic becomes too convenient, or you feel like the heroes just always have an answer and they don't really go through any raw visceral suffering. And while there are some situations where like the magic's going to show up or they have the right tool to get what they need, there are going to be characters that you freaking love and they're going to die. So
Hmm.
just to give a warning, anyone who eventually does read my books, if you have a issue with when a character dies and it's sad, this is not the book for you because there's a lot of characters you're going to love them. Some of them are going to die, and sometimes you're going to feel like the answer was so close, like if they would have had just a few more seconds, or someone would have made just a slightly different choice, they would have had the answer to survive.
Hmm.
But because I want it to be real, and because in real life there are situations where a small little mistake is incredibly costly, that definitely does show up in the book.
Hmm. Okay. I do like when there's that realism.
Uh,
Like I don't want my most favorite character to die, but um I like that it's realistic and
yeah.
I think that part of the point of books is so that we can learn things without
Uh,
having to experience it ourselves. Um so I just wanted to say that I like that idea a lot.
uh,
I'm running out of things to talk about. I feel like it's been so dense. Feels like it's been more than an hour.
yeah. Some
Oh,
pretty deep conversation. It's been awesome.
mhm. I hope you've been having fun at
Oh,
least.
yeah.
Great. What's something you haven't already mentioned that you are hoping to do with your life?
In terms of like just career stuff, I think really the storytelling is the big it. Um,
And non-career stuff?
I think there it'd just be having good relationships, making sure I made a positive impact on the people that I knew, and treated them fairly, was good to them. Which I hope that would be kind of the standard for most people.
At what point do you think you will have done enough that you could die at peace?
So I'd want to release my last book. In terms of narration, I don't think I really have an endpoint. I want to go until there's no longer an audience interested in what I have to narrate. In terms of the personal life stuff, I would like to get some traveling in. I've mostly only been within the United States, but I would like to see like Canada and parts of Europe and Australia and whatnot. So I think that'd be fun. Let's see. Beyond the traveling, I do have a small passion for forgery. One thing that I thought would be fun, probably not very practical, but have you ever seen the show Alone?
No.
So it's a game show, and the whole gist of the show, and it can vary depending on the season, but generally they pick like I think 12ish people. They put them in a remote location, and generally it's somewhere like deep in the wilderness of Canada.
Mm.
They'll drop them off in different locations, so they're far enough away to where they can't really contact each other. So they're basically like legit alone. They're the only human within like several miles, and they have to just survive there as long as they can. And they have a walkie-talkie, so if they feel like they're in too much danger or they're starving, they can call the rescue team to come get them. But the last person standing gets a bunch of money. But like one big thing that I find compelling about the show is like the scarcity of food. So a lot of people in the show will try to get some kind of hunting going on, but also they have to forage and like utilize what plants are around and try to subsist off that for a while. So I always thought it'd be fun to go to some remote location like that and just see like all my foraging skills that I have, how long I could go. And so I was like, yeah, at this point I'd probably have to tap out.
Hmm. How long do you think you could go?
I think that depends severely on the location. If it was somewhere more dense in foliage, I think I'd last a decent while because I know of a decent array of plants that you can eat and whatnot. If it was somewhere more sparse, like let's say the African savanna or just some kind of climate like that, or even like the Arctic where there's pretty much no plants at all, I think I would really struggle there.
Mhm. So, suppose you had 10 minutes to get out of your house
Oh,
for an unknown amount of time, at least 3 days. You have one bag pre-packed that you grab to go.
oh.
What's in the bag and where do you go?
Okay, sorry. So this bag is pre-packed, or I have 10 minutes to pack this bag?
Well, I would like to see what you would put in 10 minutes, but
Oh,
first let's see what you would want to have already in it. Basically, so that you could, you know, if you were expecting something like this,
yeah.
that
Okay.
you had to be out.
So I think the very first thing I'd grab would be my foraging book.
Okay.
Um, and this book it's pretty thick. It's like that thick, and it just has like a lot of different plants that you can eat. And more importantly, it shows the poisonous ones because that'd be my
Hmm.
biggest concern is just confusing something I think I can eat with something I can't, and not making it home. Uh, After that book, I would probably grab my knife and, if I'm allowed to, my gun. Because even though the main issue is going to be foraging, if I'm out in the wild like that, there's going to be a wildlife, and I need something to even the playing field. So
Hmm.
we'd definitely go for a gun if that's allowed.
Nothing's off the table. As long as you can carry it on your back,
Oh,
you're good to go.
sweet. So after the gun, I'd go for like matches and stuff for creating fire because sustaining your heat is going to be a big deal.
Hmm.
And especially when it comes to like, the scarcity of food, because the colder you get, the more calories you're going to burn, and that's going to really shorten how long you can be out there. So you want to make sure that the heat aspect is taken care of. If it's somewhere where that's going to be cold, if it's somewhere more warm, that might not matter. But then I would get like a tent, something that's like a tarp that I can just make an actual shelter out of. And then I would grab a crap ton of salt. um, and this might sound weird for most people, it wouldn't matter, but I know for me, ever since I've been dealing with all that concussion stuff, one of the and the fainting aspect of it seems to also come into play with my electrolyte balance. If I
Mm.
neglect my salts for too long, I'm just fainting like crazy. And I generally have like at least 2 teaspoons of salt a day, which for a lot of people that might be like way too much. It's going to cause them issues. But for me, if I have any less than that, I'm in danger of just falling over while I'm walking.
Hmm.
So I would, yeah, grab a crap ton of that because finding that in the wild is going to be unlikely to happen.
Hmm. Yeah, I get the salt thing. My friends have made jokes saying that I would salt my salt if I could. I like it salty.
I feel that.
Anyway, anything else you'd want to bring or just those?
Oh, let's see. I think the last thing I'd bring would be something to write with, because another aspect beyond just keeping yourself alive is you're going to have a lot of downtime. You're going to want to like
Hmm.
be able to do something with that. So could bring your phone, but you're not going to be able to charge it. Actually, I do have a solar charger, so I'd probably bring
Hmm.
that. But I would still bring like a pen and paper just so I get that visceral writing, tactile feel of it, you know.
Hmm.
Have something to do with my thoughts in the downtime.
Where would you go?
I'd probably want to pick somewhere that had good foliage to obviously feed myself, but somewhere where the wildlife isn't so intense I'm like constantly worried about being jumped by a tiger or a mountain lion or something.
Hmm.
So I would almost say the forest in France, which there are wolves, but I feel like wolves are not too intense to deal with compared to like a tiger, you know,
Hmm.
or a mountain lion, an ambush predator.
What about a bit more realistically, like in the States?
Okay, so within the states,
If it was for you, I would suppose it's not just for you. You know, that
uh,
probably the airports wouldn't be taking people out.
the you said the airports wouldn't be taking people out.
Yeah, probably like airports wouldn't be taking people out of country or anything if
Yeah,
this sort of thing was happening.
gotcha. So it'd have to be a lot closer. Probably somewhere like Milby.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Uh,
Or, according to my car, a full tank of gas will get me right about to Oceanside, California. And
ooh.
so maybe I could go a bit more in the northerly way
Uh,
to where there's more forest, you know.
hmm.
That seems nice. I
That
like
would
being
be a
in
good option,
forests.
actually. Yeah.
After that, I wanted to ask if you had 10 minutes to get out of your house and you didn't have a bag pre-packed,
Uh,
what would you want to get?
I'd probably go for the gun straight away,
Mm-hmm.
just to get that safety aspect. Go for the book second. Um, I'd probably have to ditch the phone and the pen and paper, unfortunately. So the entertainment is just that's gonna have to be sacrificed for raw survival.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would get the matches, and I'd probably be out of time after that.
Okay.
But I feel like with that, I could still survive for a decent while.
All right. Are there any things that you, um, basically things you do regularly that would make it more convenient being out in the wilderness like that?
Let's see. I think the main thing would just be my knowledge of like herbalism and foraging. That's my main strength in this department. I don't think there's anything else that really translates into good wilderness survival beyond that.
Okay. My example, so I wanted to hear that and then maybe I think I should clarify.
Uh,
For me, I like to smoke a pipe every now and then.
uh,
So I have a little bag that has my pipe, some
oh,
stuff to smoke, some matches,
yeah.
all that sort of stuff. And so if I had 10 minutes, I would probably want to grab that. Do you have anything sort of like that that would be rather convenient or
Oh.
helpful out there?
Best example I can think of would be if I brought my pen and paper. I could use that as like a fire starter essentially. So
Hmm.
maybe actually that would be smart to bring. Maybe I would bring that.
Okay. I would probably want to do that. You don't want to bring your book that tells you what plants you can't eat.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm running low on questions to ask. I'm sure you've noticed already. And Yaren looks bored. Do you have questions? Would you like to talk at all? How long have we been going? Nice.
Nice. You normally go for 3 hours?
2 hours.
Oh, 2 hours? Okay.
2 hours, but we can end it whenever you want.
Yeah,
You're
I'm
the
good with
guest, so whatever you want to
whatever.
do is.
Down for that. I do have another question though. So because we talked about how you like your main drive to get into podcasting, but one question I have is if you could have just anyone on the podcast, who would be your number one choice? I mean, who would be like the crowning moment for your podcast to have them on? The only stipulation is they have to actually be living today.
I was gonna ask that. um, I'd want to do someone that was pretty big,
Oh,
like maybe someone like AJ from the Y Files, if you've seen that.
oh yeah, he's got good stuff.
Yeah, I like a lot of his stuff. Barring that, maybe Graham Hancock or like Donald Trump.
Oh, interesting.
Um, I would say Michael Heiser, but I heard that he passed away recently.
Oh, shoot.
What about you? If you were running a podcast,
Let's
who
see,
would you
if I
want
was a
on?
podcaster, almost say Brandon Sanderson, just so I can pick his brain on like author
Hmm.
related stuff.
Okay. I I think it would be fun, and if I had the opportunity, I would get Brandon Sanderson on. But I also practice a little bit of slander here and there. um, I'm very vocal about this. I don't like hard magic systems. I think that there's a certain wonder to fantasy,
Oh,
and when you understand everything about it, you don't wonder, you don't have that wonder,
yeah.
and that can make it more boring. And
Oh,
um, if anyone saw my at-home bookshelf or these books behind the Constitution,
oh,
I've read a lot of Sanderson books, and I liked some, and there were some things I didn't like. And one thing I bring up is that I have a theory that great writers will produce great quotes.
oh,
So my main example is Ayn Rand when in her notes about Atlas Shrugged, she says, reason is not automatic. Those who deny it cannot be conquered by it. And I really like that. I think that's just a great quote. And usually when I'm making this point, I tell people, tell me what is your favorite Brandon Sanderson quote?
oh,
And now I'm asking you, what's your favorite Brandon Sanderson quote?
oh. Nothing comes to mind right
Yeah.
now.
It's usually one of two answers.
Uh,
Either nothing really comes to mind,
hmm.
or honor is dead, but I'll see what I can do. To those two responses, I have my own responses. Either nothing comes to mind, because there aren't any, and honor is dead, but I'll see what I can do. Great scene.
uh,
Terrible quote. That line sucked. I mean, say it in any other context than exactly that, it's bad.
yeah.
You know, I think that a great quote can be taken out of context.
Oh,
Something like
indeed.
Jules Verne, but hope is so firmly rooted in the hearts of men. That was from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And that's part of why I ask every guest about the quote of the day, is because I want to learn about it. There's something to quotes that I like to practice and,
Uh,
you know, learn about, repeat. Um, and I think that Brandon Sanderson doesn't really have that.
yeah, that's fair. Because that's kind of reminds me of I was talking to one of my friends who's pretty big into fantasy as well, and she was saying like I don't believe she likes Sanderson. Like she appreciates him, but doesn't like actually like his writing style,
Hmm.
and that stems from feeling that it's too. I think it really has to come down to the prose of it all.
Hmm.
Like it's written just too simply, and there doesn't feel like there's enough emotion behind it. Which
Hmm.
obviously people can disagree. Um, I wouldn't say that there's completely no emotion in Sanderson's work, but I definitely see the argument for that.
Hmm. I can agree too, because he does write in a very straightforward way that almost, well, he might do this on purpose. I saw in one interview he was saying that one of the best things he thinks about writing is that he can write something and then two people on opposite sides of the world can imagine the exact same thing.
Yeah,
I get that, but also I like the idea of them imagining it different,
me too.
And so like if I just tell you like a hero rose up, you might think about Superman, while Darren might think about King Arthur.
Uh,
And you're both imagining the same thing, but drastically different images appear.
yeah,
And I like that a lot more. Um,
that makes a lot of sense, and it kind of reminds me how earlier you were saying that you're more of a fan of magic systems that aren't hard
mhm.
because when they're hard like that, there's no wiggle room for your extra imagination. It's clear cut. That's what it is. But yeah, without that, you can definitely have more imagination. You can kind of insert yourself even to some degree and kind of make your own fantasy out of it.
Mhm. I think that it helps people to relate more to a story when there's room to insert yourself. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying like every main character should be a self-insert, but it's like this is one thing I like about multiple points of view in books is like Um, in The Wheel of Time, for example, I don't know if you've read this, but one of the main characters is pretty angsty, and with reason. He's doomed to go insane,
Yeah.
and if people he loves are around him when he goes insane, he's doomed to kill them.
Uh,
So he pushes his friends away the whole time, and that can sort of resonate with people who are pushing their friends away or feeling like they can't really connect with people.
uh,
They can connect with him because of that. And then there's another main character who gets a wife and he doesn't want to be in charge. He wants to, like, just have a home and have a family that will be alive, but he's pushed into these duties of having to protect other people and lead them in a war.
uh,
And that can resonate with people who want a simpler life with like him, but are forced to do harder things, and basically people who see duty as a virtue even when it sucks to do your duty.
yeah.
I like that, and I like I was saying, the wiggle room, how it doesn't lock down and say like you have to be exactly like this in order to get it. Kind of like in Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive, if you read those, basically everyone who gets the power has to be deeply traumatized in some way.
Yeah.
And I think that that's stupid. It should be, I would rather if it was 100% random who got the
Yeah.
power or not, because you basically, because like, I kind of deny trauma. If I've been traumatized, I deny it.
Mm.
And I've had people say, like, you were deeply traumatized. Are you okay? And I go, no, I wasn't. You don't tell me about my own life. Or I'll just ask them how.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I seem traumatized in some ways, but I'm fine. You
Mm.
know, I think that there are real people who need therapy, but most people who go to therapy are just wusses. Um, a lot of people might not agree with that, but like, if you had abusive parents, you might need therapy. If you can't handle the pressures of everyday life, you might just be a wuss. So I don't like the idea of a power system that would exclude people like me. Maybe that's just
Oh,
selfish of
that
me,
makes a lot of
but
sense, actually. Yeah.
anyway, what were your thoughts on that and like a power system that you or someone like you would be excluded from? What do you think about it?
I think it makes it less compelling. It makes it feel like it just doesn't apply to you and makes it feel a bit more foreign, but not in like an exotic, fun kind of way. Just like oh, I can't relate, you
Hmm.
know. So due to that, I definitely see why that doesn't have the draw that other stories and other systems would have for you.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that one of the draws to stories and why we read them so much is like after reading it, you should think like there was a point to it.
Yeah.
That's what I think, and that's why I don't like a lot of modern literature. But I have heard like a lot of people talking about how awesome Stormlight was, and then book four was not quite as good, and book five just sucked.
Oh.
That's what most people say.
Yeah, kind of unfortunate. Seems like it didn't really live up to the legacy that Mistborn laid the groundwork for.
Hmm. I heard one thing I thought was kind of wild.
Oh.
Somebody said that Mistborn was their favorite book series ever, but Stormlight was their least favorite ever, like one they hated the most. And I thought that's wild for two things. One, I didn't really love Stormlight after book two, but I know for a fact I've hated certain book series. Like, I know there are terrible ones out there.
Uh,
And second, maybe I'm super biased, and I know that I am, but Lord of the Rings is probably the greatest fantasy book series ever. And I wouldn't be surprised if when I die, that will still be the case. Even if I write 100 fantasy books,
uh,
I'm pretty sure Lord of the Rings is still going to be the best.
yeah, it's set a pretty high bar. And it has also just the aura of being the first of that caliber and basically created its own genre into some
Hmm.
degree. So Yeah, I'd be very surprised if it ever was surpassed.
I know. It'll be cool. I
Mm.
do have a little bit of advice that so far I've only really told my wife because no one really has a situation in which I've had to give them this advice.
Uh,
But I say, like, don't compare yourself to others. Don't compare yourself to the next guy. Everyone always says, like, don't compare yourself to others because that's going to have you unhappy. I'm not saying that. Don't
uh,
compare yourself to the next guy. Compare yourself to the best.
yeah.
Because I don't want to be like the next guy. I want to write books like Lord of the Rings. I'm not going to compare myself to all of these current authors who will become a footnote in history. I'm going to compare myself to the best. And then hopefully in 100 years, someone's going to say, what's the best book ever written? Well, it's either the Bible or Lord of the Rings or this book by Jackson Kelch. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, that's a good aspiration.
What are your thoughts on that? What do you compare yourself to?
I do believe that envy can be the thief of joy. So, I know I'm definitely not perfect in this regard, but I am careful not to compare myself too much and to get beat up over how my stuff stacks up against theirs.
Mm-hmm.
But if I did have to compare myself to someone, and let's say in the writing field, I probably would do it as well to Tolkien. I think that's an incredibly good bar and like kind of target to go for. In terms of the narration, I'm probably always going to compare myself to Corpse Husband because to me, he's kind of been like just the dominant force. Even though he's retired, no one's ever going to, whenever that someone thinks about creepypasta, the odds of not thinking about Corpse Husband in that same kind of thought process is pretty slim. He's had that kind of same impact on that Tolkien had on writing. So, yeah, I think that's who I would compare myself to.
Okay. I did want to ask, do you know why it's called creepypasta? Like,
Yeah, so there's a bit of a history there. Back in the day, whenever someone would write something online, whether it was like, I don't know if you remember these, but people would write out something like, if you saw this message, it means that you have to like go in your backyard and pray, or else like someone's going to attack you, or
mhm.
something crazy like that. They'd call that a copy pasta because you would, copy and paste it.
Mm,
But then people started doing it with driving a lot deeper into like the creepy aspect of it, and because of creepy copy,
mm-hmm.
copy it kind of just like morphed into that saying of creepy pasta. So basically, at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's a scary story that you would plaster wherever you could.
Okay. That makes some sense, though. I was hoping there was a little more to do with spaghetti or,
Spaghetti.
I learned that,
Unfortunately, I don't think carbs had any factor there.
I don't know. I learned that spaghetti westerns were called that because there's actually like a term coined by a Spanish movie critic
Oh.
to criticize Western movies directed by Italians. And I think that's hilarious, but
Oh.
like a spaghetti western is specifically one directed by an Italian, but if you want to just go on the broader, it's a more gritty, realistic western. And
Oh.
so I was wondering, is there like a difference between a regular creepy post or creepy pasta?
It might depend on the era, but like, so right now, a creepypasta is more of like a full structured story. Back in the day, it may have been like just a little something that you plaster everywhere, but that's way less common and pretty much doesn't happen. Nowadays, if you're reading a creepypasta, it's like generally at least like 5 minutes long, or in some
Mm-hmm.
cases like several hours long.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really fit the definition of what it's supposed to be anymore. It's like the more accurate thing would be just a scary story would be the best way to explain it. But the term creepypasta has just stuck with it.
Okay.
At least that's my understanding of it.
And if you were to choose a name for it, what would it be?
Probably just scary story, something like
All
that.
right. I like it. Sometimes I do like straightforward things.
Uh,
What was your favorite one of these creepy stories? And also, did I already ask what one inspired you to do it?
I don't think any story per se inspired me to do it. It was more so the two people I was around. So Jaren's brother and my friend Mina.
Okay.
Um, in terms of my favorite, there was one that I narrated recently, and this one was a bit of a heart clencher. But the story starts off with this guy, and his mind is like going back and forth in time, and he's realizing that like something's wrong because he'll have memories or he'll feel like he's living in the moment of when he first got married. Then all of a sudden he's in the future, he's got grandkids, and all of a sudden he's back in time again with just his son. And he's kind of jumping all over the place. And the way the story builds up, you think, oh, there's like a cosmic alien like attached to his brain. It's like making him jump through time and stuff. But towards the end, you realize he just has Alzheimer's.
Ah,
So it's like just a brutal shock to what you're expecting. Like, yeah, the subversion of expectations is just crazy on that one. So I think right now that's one of my favorite.
okay. Was it just the subversion of expectations that you really liked about that one, or
I think
was
that's the
there?
main thing. The overall writing of that author is just really good. He's got pretty good prose and really draws you into the story. And I've narrated, I think at this point, like two or three of his stories, just because they're that good. I keep going back to him.
Okay. Who was it?
So his name, he's on Reddit. His name is U/M59Gar,
Hmm.
if I'm remembering that right.
Okay. What about ones that you've written?
Yeah, so I've written only a few so far. My most popular one was about a haunted hotel. But I think my favorite of what I've written is the one I call it the. Well, here's what gets interesting. So when I released the video, I titled it as like four scary stories, and it's basically like first person point of view of this guy. And they were all supposed to be cosmic horrors. Which is, do you know what a cosmic horror is?
Um, Typically Lovecraftian, but
Yes,
like
yeah,
outside of your typical perception of reality, right?
yeah, yeah. So the video was going to be four cosmic horror stories, and it starts off with one horror story, and then it goes into the second one, then it goes into the third. But on the fourth one, the twist is that it's actually all just one story, and you've been following the same character the entire way through. And like in each story, I dropped little hints about what was going on, and in isolation, it didn't seem relevant. But when you read or hear the fourth story, you realize how everything kind of interconnects. So
Mhm.
um, I think the reason that's my favorite of what I've written is because it took a lot of work to get everything to line up. I felt like I was just dealing with a lot of little threads I had to weave together towards the end. So it was pretty satisfying when it finally came together.
Okay. Have there been any stories you found that you wanted to read but didn't get the option to?
Yeah, because generally my process is if I find a story I like, I contact the author and I make sure that they're okay with it, and that if I do narrate it, I do it in a way that they're okay with, whether that be like mentioning their name at the end or the beginning or linking their socials or whatever. But there's been some authors where I ask them, "Hey, I like your story. Can I narrate it?" And they just straight up tell me no, and I just tell, "Oh, no worries, we won't do it." Just leave it
Mm-hmm.
at that. And so, super unfortunate because sometimes those are really good stories, but at the end of the day, I have to respect
Mm-hmm.
their wishes on that.
Do they ever tell you why?
Um, Generally no, although I did have one instance of it. So I asked them if I could narrate their story, and their story was, and I'm gonna say allegedly because I haven't like hired a FBI agent to go and check all the facts behind it, but they said their story was true, it was like a true scary experience. And I asked them if I could narrate it, and they said, "No, I don't feel like your channel's appropriate for this." And that's kind of fair because on my channel, I do like just pretty much anything scary. There's no specific like subcategory. Like some channels will do just trucking stories or just werewolf stories
Mm.
or whatever. I do a pretty broad range, and because of that, the vast majority of what I have done is just just straight up fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this author only wanted their stuff to appear on channels where everything is taken as absolute truth. There's no like imagination aspect behind it. So
Mm. Do you think they were lying about any of it?
I don't know. That's definitely a thing that's been an issue within the whole genre. Is there's a lot of stories that people write, and then in the comments, people will argue about whether or not it's true or if it was like just AI slop or what have you. So and it's hard to tell as an author, or sorry, as a narrator, you just have to use your best judgment. Generally, if I do search or seek out a story, I'll look at the comments, and as long as there's nothing like if there's a lot of people claiming that's AI, I just won't touch it.
Mm.
But if that's not the case, then generally I'll take them at their word for it, and if they're claiming that's true, then I'll read it, and I'll generally like in my descriptions and stuff, I will say that it's presented as true, but I haven't fact checked it.
Mhm.
essentially.
Okay. Have there been any that you have fact checked?
No, I would like to get to a point, like if my channel was big enough and I was able to hire more people on, if I got to a point where I could seek out these stories and have someone do like some investigative work to find out if they actually happened, I think that'd be awesome. But also, it's just not realistic for the resources I have to work with.
Okay. Have you ever had anything happen to you that you think would be worth writing in as one of these scary stories?
Um, Not if the narrator was going for something paranormal. Like I've had just nothing in that category. If they're
Hmm.
looking for like a scary or like disturbing experiences, I've had a few. One of them was the uh, theme park experience, but now I know that
Mm.
I may have just been having a prank being played on me, so that may not fit the bill anymore.
I also wanted to
Yeah.
ask, have you ever wanted one of these experiences?
No, I am more than fine to just be talking about them. I don't want to live through them.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because
Hmm.
some people are freaky.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, definitely not shaming anyone who's into that, but that's not for me.
Mhm. I don't get people liking to scare themselves, even with like horror movies. Usually they just have a bad plot. And I don't like a bad story. One thing, I don't know to what extent you agree with this, but I've found that so many horror games, which I don't like to play, especially not when the sun goes down,
Uh,
so many of them have like such a good story. And I love a good story,
uh.
but I also don't want to set up my gaming stuff in the bathroom so as I can plan on, crapping myself from fear. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Do you try to play games like that?
Oh, no, I haven't recently. But there is that, it's almost become a meme at this point that lately the games of the horror genre are just outdoing the shows in terms of
Hmm.
story.
Yeah, I was watching something where someone starts to like, or well, they were walking you through the story of the game Soma. I
Oh.
haven't played any of that, but it's like a psychological horror. And I got like 10 minutes in and I was like, wait, this sounds awesome. Let me just wishlist it and not finish
uh,
the video. And then I watched the game trailer and I was like, oh, I might just watch the video. Like, I don't know if you've ever played Bioshock, but
no.
that's not even marketed as like a scary game. But
Yeah.
when I first tried it, I remember specifically, I played it on April 2nd, got super scared, turned it off, waited a while until I thought, like, okay, I'm ready now. And I went, turn it on, go to save. It was April 3rd. Played for a couple hours, go to save. And they're like, would you like to save over your last save, April 2nd? I was like, wait, I didn't play yesterday. It took me a year and a day to get over it.
How old were you?
I might have been 15, maybe 14. um,
So usually at the 2 hour mark or the 2 hour mark, we drop the whole having a specific theme, I guess,
Oh,
that we follow, and you just talk about whatever the crap you want. You can goof off, you can mess around, if you want to.
okay.
You
mhm.
also can just end it.
But before that, I have two questions.
Okay.
The first one, what's the quote of the day?
I think it's going to be envy is the thief of joy.
How come you chose that one?
Has to do with our conversation about it earlier, mainly, and just really put in perspective of, well, it's awesome to be having these goals and like chasing your dreams. If you don't have the right mindset about it, you're going to get the very opposite thing from it, from that
Okay.
pursuit.
Um, have you ever seen that play out in your life?
I think so. And even within doing the scary story stuff, when I first started, I was way too focused on like, okay, my first two videos gotta just explode, and if they don't, it means I failed. So I really had to come to terms with, no, I'm just gonna do this. It's gonna be a fun experience. I'm gonna obviously do what I can to be good with it, but I can't let it rule my life to the point where like every 5 minutes I'm looking at my app, looking at how many extra views I got and how it's performing.
Okay. My second question I wanted to ask was, who is someone that you look up to in life?
Oh.
Who's like someone you aspire to be more like, and will you help me get them on?
Okay, let's see. There's a lot of people I want to recommend, but it will put my identity in jeopardy, so that's going to constrain my choice a little.
We can cut that out or just wait until we're done. But,
Okay.
I just thought that would help grow the channel, and also like, for example, Amaron is, as I described him on the podcast, semi-cowboy,
Oh.
and the person he suggested was his mentor Oli, who is like a full rancher, deals with horses all the time. And so basically, whatever Amaron taught me about horses, Oli can teach me more. And also, anybody who liked the Amaron episode will probably like the Oli episode.
Oh, yeah.
And so it helps me branch off to see, you know. So if you suggest someone who does more creepypastas, and people who like this episode might like their episode. If you suggest someone who has more of those, like wants to talk about AI and how that's affecting the world, then people who like this might like that. You know,
Okay,
just
yeah.
that sort of
So
stuff.
when you do your interviews, does it have to be in person, or do you also do like online?
I've only done in person so far.
Oh,
I haven't done anyone very far away.
yeah.
I have guests I would like to have on who live like several hours drive away, but we just started and I don't want to make them drive all the way out here when we just started.
Yeah.
At least not for that only, you know.
Uh,
If they already have something lined up, I would love for them to swing by.
yeah, that makes sense. That just got me thinking, because most of the people I know within the creepypasta sphere are nowhere near where I live, so that would be definitely a logistical challenge. In terms of when it comes to like just writing and stuff, a good option maybe, and I'm pretty sure you know him, would be Stockton Kelch.
I didn't know he was much of a writer.
Yeah.
Like I was entered into the short story contest with him, but beyond that, I didn't know.
Oh.
So I'll take note of that and then ask if you have anyone else
Okay.
at the end of the podcast. Does Stockton have a K in it?
I believe it does, yeah.
Does it have a C in it also?
Yes.
All right. Heck yeah. Would you like to keep hanging out, or are you feeling kind of done?
I'd love to take this mask off.
All right, let's end it then. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks
And
for having me.
as always, my name is Jaxon Kelch, and this has been the Open Chapter Society. Good day.